Awesome. Well, hey, in this series, we've been talking about where we're headed as a church. We've been in this series called We the Co., which I personally have really enjoyed over the last few weeks. If you're just hanging with us, you're jumping into part 4 of this series, We the Co., but we're going to catch you up just a little bit, and I think you're going to enjoy today as well. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Ryan, by the way. I'm the lead pastor here at the Co. Get the joy of serving here with you guys. But in this series, we've been saying, hey, you know what? Our church has been in a season of transition. It feels like we've been kind of like on the go, traveling a little bit, right, as a church over the last year and a half. In fact, a variety of transitions over the last probably 18 months to 2 years. We changed locations, we changed names, right? We changed lead pastors. It's yours truly, so like we've had a variety of transition over the last year and a half. And in this series, we've been talking about, hey, like in the midst of all that transition, where are we headed? Where are we going? And all that kind of culminates to today, which is Commitment Sunday, which is just an opportunity for those of us who call this church our home, or those of us who are ready to start calling this church our home. It's an opportunity for you to just say, hey, I'm committed, I'm partnering, I'm fully engaged in the life and the mission of this church. Now, if you're here for the first time, or you're a little newer, or it's been a while, you're just kind of jumping back in, checking things out with us at the Co. this morning, I'll say this, it's kind of an interesting day to jump into a church on like a Commitment Sunday, right? Like feels kind of heavy, feels a little different. Like we're going to talk about some things this morning that we don't typically talk about on a Sunday morning. It might kind of feel like you just showed up to a stranger's Thanksgiving dinner, something like that, You can learn, here's what I'd say, you can learn a lot about a family over their Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like some of you have broken up with people over their family at Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like you just learn a lot about a family in a situation or a meal or a conversation like that. And so if you're newer with us today, right, you're just hanging out, hey, don't feel pressure today. This is a chance for people who call this place home to kind of take a step of commitment. But for you, I would just say, hey, you couldn't have picked a better day to join us, because quite honestly, you're going to learn more about this church today than you would if you had come pretty much any other Sunday throughout the year. So I'm so glad that you're here. Now, through this series, we've been talking a lot about like where we're going and what the future looks like. Today, I want to spend a few minutes here at the beginning just to talk a little bit about, where we've been, or like even like the movement that we're connected to and rooted to, right, as a church. So I'll tell you this, our church, if you don't know this, our church is 24 years old. We launched 24 years ago, just down the road at Forest Lake Area High School, right, not far from here, right? So we're 24 years old as a church. But we're connected to a movement that is way bigger and has been around for way longer than that, right? Obviously, the movement of Christianity, right? A movement that originated with Jesus about 2,000 years ago. But even further than that, we're connected to a movement of people, right? A group of people who have roots even deeper, right? Because we're connected also to this movement of Judaism that has its rootedness in a group of people who were kind of called out of Egypt, out of slavery, into the wilderness, right? As a group of people who didn't have any land, didn't really have like things figured out. They weren't like a formed society. They were just a group of people that were called out and separated into this wilderness, this desert area in the Middle East, right? And God began to say to them, hey, I'm going to create a new people out of you. He said, I'm going to reveal myself to you in ways that I've not revealed myself yet to the world. And then through you, through that movement, he said to these people, he said, I'm going to bless the world, and the world is going to know me first through you. So these people were in the wilderness, right? These Hebrews, these Israelites in the wilderness, and they find themselves experiencing God in ways that people hadn't experienced God, and ultimately instructed to build like a structure or a house for God's presence to come and dwell within. And so they built a tabernacle, which is really just the Hebrew word for tent, right? Tabernacle, it's the Hebrew word for tent there. It's this place where God's presence would literally come and dwell in this structure. And then they were wanderers throughout the desert. So they would pick up, they would move, they'd take down the tabernacle, they'd move it with them, they'd set it back up, right? And they just moved this tent, basically this very glorified tent for God to dwell in, which sometimes people ask me, they're like, hey, how do you feel about being a pastor of a portable church that has to like set up and tear down and set up and tear down? I'm just like, well, that's what God's people did at the beginning of God's people. I don't know. It feels natural in a lot of ways. This is kind of the first portable church in the Middle East, right? So the tabernacle, this place where God's presence dwelt, the Israelites ultimately established themselves as a nation in the Middle East, right? And 500 years after they built the tabernacle, a king within Israel is moved. He goes, man, I'm living in this beautiful, beautiful mansion, right? This beautiful palace built for a king, and God is living in a tent. He goes, man, we got to do something about that. And so he goes and he builds a temple, right? Which is just a Hebrew word connected to a palace, right? Just this nicer home, this nicer presence for God. Like, God just gets an upgrade, right? Like, episode of Cribs here, going from campsite in the woods to just full-on palace, beautiful, ornate place. Again, a place where God's presence could dwell and live, and where people would come to experience God's presence. Now, about 1,000 years later, Jesus enters the scene in the same region of the Middle East, really as the fullness of God's presence in humanity. Right? And Jesus begins to do things that no one had ever really done before and say things that no one had ever really been able to say before. Right? And people started to take notice, and Jesus starts to get this large gathering, this large following, and then even beyond his immediate following, there's just word that's spreading about him throughout the region. There's just this buzz going on. It turns out, right, like you heal people, you walk on water, you raise people from the dead, like people take notice, they start to talk about it. So there's all this chatter about Jesus going out throughout the region. So one day, Jesus calls together his closest followers, right, his disciples. He pulls them together. He wants to kind of get like a litmus test or a word on like how people are talking about him throughout the region. So hey guys, like what are people saying about me? And they look at him and they go, well, some people are saying that you must be John the Baptist come back from the dead. Other people are saying you must be Elijah, a prophet of old who did amazing things, right? Who's again back from the dead or come back to earth, right? Or others say, hey, you must be a prophet like Elijah who's come back once again to the world, right? And Jesus looks at them and he goes, okay. And then he asks this question. He goes, okay, who do you say that I am? Right? And Simon Peter, one of these disciples, looks at Jesus and he says this. He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, which is one of the first statements of faith in Jesus' divinity in his time on the world. This is a big proclamation, a big statement. It's something that they've been looking for and waiting for, but yet not experienced. He says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answers him and says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, which just means Simon, son of Jonah, his father. He says, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven has revealed this to you. He goes on to say this. He says, and I tell you, you are Peter. And on this rock, on this statement, on this one piece, on this one point and moment of faith, on this one belief, on this rock, I will build my church. Now, quite honestly, the word church probably shouldn't be used there. The translation probably shouldn't include it because church actually derives itself from a Greek word, a German word, I should say, that means like religious structure or religious building. But the word that Jesus actually uses here in the Greek is a word called ekklesia. It says, on this rock I will build my ekklesia, which just means a gathering of people, a coming together of people, an assembly, a group of people. He says, on this rock I will build my gathering. And he says this, he says, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it, which is basically to say, not even death, not my death, not your death, nothing can stand against it. And he goes on in this moment to actually tell the disciples of his anticipated death. In this moment, Jesus does two things. First, he predicts his death. Jesus predicted his death in that moment. But he did something else. He predicted us, this, his gathering, his movement. That gathering, that movement began to grow from there. Jesus died, right? Resurrection, ascension, right? After Jesus' life, it continues to grow and it continues to build, which is one of those most biggest mysteries within history is how did this group of ragtag, uneducated men and women who were the earliest followers of Jesus begin such a movement that spread so far to the point that you and I are here today that actually took over or gained the influence of an empire and ultimately the world, right? Like the movement of Christianity spread to almost every corner of our planet. And historians for years have tried to figure this out and explain it, and they can't explain quite how or why it happened. They just can explain or recognize and acknowledge the impact and the influence that it's had. In fact, one historian, a guy named Bart Ehrman, who's a New Testament scholar and also an atheist, he puts it this way. He says this. He says, Christianity not only overtook an empire, it radically altered the lives of those living in it. He says it was a revolution that affected government practices, legislation, art, literature, every corner of the world, right? Music, philosophy. He says, and on the even more fundamental level, it affected the very understanding billions of people had about what it means to be human. It says, however one evaluates the merits of the case, no one can deny that it was the most monumental cultural transformation our world has ever seen. Nearly every corner of the planet has been touched by this movement. Nearly every corner of the planet has had its mindset and its shifting, or its mindset and its thinking shift through this movement. It's why today, when atrocities happen, everyone goes, whoa, 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 like that's not how it should be, right? When one country unnecessarily just invades another country for the sake of taking its land and taking from it, right? The whole world looks around and goes, you can't do that. Like something's wrong with that. Before Jesus, that was just normal. Before Christianity, before this movement grew, right? Like that was just life. Might makes right. If you can take it, it's yours. And the world didn't intervene in those moments. The world stepped back and said, if you're big enough, you can have it. And the only reason someone might step in is if it was advantageous for them and they could piggyback off that as well. But today, moments like this happen in our world. And our world looks around and goes, whoa, whoa, that's not okay. Do you know where that comes from? You know where we got that? It's this collective consciousness, this collective conscience, right, that developed through the spread and the movement of a faith that consistently said, love your neighbor, love your enemy, pay attention to those around you in need, care for the poor and the widow among you, right? This movement that touched every corner of our planet and shifted the way that we think about how our world ought to interact with one another. One of the most influential, if not the most influential movements our world has ever seen. It's somewhere along the way. At some point along the way, this movement began to lose some of its influence. You can look around the world, you can look around places and see the influence of Christianity continue to diminish. You can look at places like Europe and see places where church after church gets turned into something else after something else, right? Like these places where the influence of Christianity continues to grow weaker and weaker. Even within America, you can find yourself going, hey, the movement continues to lose influence. You could pick any community in our country this morning right now and drive around that community in any corner of our country and find church parking lot after church parking lot with more spots empty than are full, right? And you go, why are there so many empty spots in that lot, right? Because there was a day when they needed every spot in that lot. Yet that day is far gone in many communities in our country. In fact, to the point that the headline that we hear over and over and over again is some version of this, right? The church in America is dying, right? The church in America is dying. And if that's true, the headline locally could just as easily be this, right? The church in Forest Lake is dying, continuing to lose its influence, continuing to lose its pull, continuing to lose the impact that it was designed and meant to make in the world. Can I tell you something, though? Do you know who gets to decide if that headline comes true? Do you know who gets to decide if that becomes our reality? We do. We do. Because the church was never meant to be a building or a parking lot anyway, right? We do. Because it's almost you are your church. Not the space, not the seat you're in, not the lobby you walk through, not the donut you grab, right? Like you are your church. The Apostle Paul, one of the earliest leaders within the Christian movement, put it this way in a letter to one of the churches, right? He said, now you are the body of Christ and individually members of it. It says, you are the body, and you individually are a piece of it. You are a piece of it. You might go like, I don't feel like a part of the body. I don't know if I want to be a part of the body, right? Like I just want to come, hang out, consume a little bit. I don't know if I want to actually be a part. And Paul goes, they're like, no. Like that's not how this works. Like you are a part of the body. So much so, he said just a little bit ahead of this, he said, if your foot should say, which if your foot should say anything, right, you should probably just pay attention in that moment because something's going on. I don't know, right? But that's what Paul's doing here. He's using humor to drive home the point. He says, if the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I don't belong to the body, right? I can't pick stuff up. I can't do stuff that hand can do. I'm not sure I'm a part of this. He goes, no, that's not how it works. That would not make you any less a part of the body. He says, if the ear should say, right, like, I'm not an eye. I don't belong to the body, right? Like, I don't really feel like I've got something to give the body. I don't know if I'm a part of it, right? It's not comfortable for me. I wish it was an eye. Being an eye would be so much better. I don't know. So I don't really think I'm a part of the body. No. Like you can't just decide that you're not a part of the body. That's not how it works. He goes, that would not make you any less part of the body. You're attached to this thing. In other words, Paul might just look at us and go like, hey, listen, you're stuck, right? Like you're stuck with us. Quite honestly, we're stuck with you. Right? Which means this, though. Don't miss this. If you're stuck to the body, your engagement is essential. Not optional, not like nice to have, not like a bonus or a plus. No. When you're in the body but not engaged in the body actually misses out on what you bring to the body. Can you imagine if you just woke up one morning and your foot just decided, I don't feel like being a foot, right? Like, I'm not really feeling like a foot today, or even worse, like, I'll be a foot, but I'm only going to like partially be a foot. I don't know if I want to I don't know if I'm ready to like fully be a part of this, right? Like, guys, but I'll be like partially a foot. Like, are we walking today? If we're walking today, I'll be a walking foot. We're running. I don't think I'm a running foot. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just kind of partially be a foot. Like, the rest of your body would look at your foot and be like, bro, that's not how this works. You're a foot. Let's go. Be a foot. Because we need you fully engaged in the body. Because when your foot decides not to be a foot, the body misses out. And when you decide not to fully engage in the life of the body that you're a part of, you don't just miss out. Listen, the body misses out. Which is why for the last 3 weeks I've been asking you to consider being engaged, being fully engaged in 3 areas. You know these by now, right? Like we've asked you to invite boldly. We've asked you to serve passionately. We've asked you to give generously. You can throw this up there. We've asked you to invite boldly, to serve passionately, and to give generously. I want to take a minute just to break these down just a little bit for us real quick, right? Let's talk about inviting boldly. Let me talk about this. The number one thing I believe you can do to invite boldly to your church. Some of us will go like, hey, I don't know about inviting. Like inviting's hard. I don't know if I can fully engage in inviting. Like that one's a difficult one for me. I get it. The number one thing that you can do to invite boldly is to just talk about your church. Right? Tomorrow morning's going to come. A lot of us are going to go to work. Some of us are going to go to school. We'll go to the places that we have influence, right? And somebody at some point is probably going to ask you, hey, how was your weekend? Probably going to say, hey, you know what? It was good. Friday night, we had friends over for pizza. Saturday, we went for a hike, right? Like Sunday afternoon, we just kind of took it easy and rested and got some good sleep, watched the game Sunday night. It was fun. And you just like skipped over 10 to 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. You know what I mean? Listen. And here's the thing. I'm not saying like, you got to tell them everything about your church. Just work it in there. Hey, we had friends over for pizza on Friday night, went for a hike on Saturday, Sunday morning, went to church. It's pretty good. New pastor. He's amazing. Love that guy, right? No, I'm just mentioning the church, right? And then Friday or Sunday night, we took some time off, we rested, whatever. Just drop it in there, right? And here, let me say this. I know, because I've been this before. Some of us are afraid to even lightly talk about our church because you're afraid that people are going to think you're one of those weird people who goes to church. And I get it, right? But let me tell you why we need you to do that. Because we need people to know that normal people go to church too. And if you don't talk about it, the only people talking about it are the weirdos. And we need you fully engaged in the life of your church, talking about your church so that people know that normal people go to church too. Let me tell you real quick about 2 immediate opportunities coming up for you to invite people, right? 2 things that you can talk about. The first one is this. It's a new series we're launching next week called Happily. If you're married, if you know someone who's married, if you know someone who's thinking about getting married, if you know someone who's frustrated with their marriage, they complain about their spouse, they whine about their spouse, right? You know someone who's thinking about jumping into marriage, you know somebody who wants to maybe get married one day, you know somebody who's been married before but trying to figure out what happened, you know someone who definitely doesn't want anything to do with marriage, but they want to understand more about why they don't even want to touch marriage, right? This is a series for them, right? Great opportunity to invite them to be a part of this with us over the next 4 weeks. It's a normal thing to talk about. Everyone you know talks about their marriage or wanting to be married or how they used to be married. And it's a common topic, right? You can invite someone to be a part of this. Second thing is this. Easter is the last Sunday of March, March 31st, one of the most invitable days to invite people. It's one of the days where our culture is consistently talking about the same kind of thing that we are, at least thematically, right? Throughout our world. It's a great opportunity for you to invite people. We're doing everything we can to make this day as invitable as possible. I'm going to be sharing a message that honestly I've been processing for 5 years. I'm really excited about it. And it's around what I believe is one of the greatest evidences for the resurrection of Jesus. And it's not even in the Bible. It's going to be real fun that day, right? But this is designed for the people in your life who aren't sure what they think about all of this. It's a great time to invite them, right? We're doing everything we can to make it invitable. We're planning, it's going to be so much fun. Planning a glow-in-the-dark egg hunt for kids after service. A glow-in-the-dark egg hunt. It's going to be so much fun. My 5-year-old is going to lose her mind. If you have kids, they're going to lose their mind. They're going to love it. But can I tell you something? We're not doing that egg hunt for my 5-year-old. And we're not doing that egg hunt for your kids either. We're doing that egg hunt. And we're making it as cool as possible, to make it as easy as possible for you to talk to people about what's happening at your church that day and invite them to be a part of it with you. And I'll just give you permission to do this. You can give them the egg hunt as an insurance policy. Hey, look, I think church is great. You might hate it. Worst thing that happens, though, your kids are going to have an awesome glow-in-the-dark egg hunt, okay? So, even if service is just awful, it's still going to be great. Just use it as an insurance policy, whatever you want to do, right? Whatever it takes. We're going to do everything we can, though, to make that day as invitable for you because we're asking you to invite boldly. Right? Second thing we're asking you to do, right? Serve passionately. We'll talk about that real quick, right? I've told you this before. We have 60 additional opportunities in our church right now that we know of where we could plug people in 60 additional opportunities that you could jump into, right? If you're not already serving. I'll say this, some of you are serving right now, but you might find yourself in a spot where you're not serving passionately. And we want you, if you're not waking up on Sunday morning excited to go and serve, it might be time to find an area that you're more passionate about. And we are fully up for that conversation because we want you to love what you do and see the impact that you're making in what you're doing, right? So if you're going hey, I just want to be with kids and just pour into kids, let's do it. If you're hey, I just would rather be serving the doors, let's do it, right? Whatever it takes to get you in a spot where you're serving passionately. But I'll tell you, if you're not already serving and you're a part of this body needs you to jump in and be fully engaged in that way for the sake of what's ahead for us as a body. Third thing we've asked you to do is this, right? Give generously. All right, we talked about this a lot last week. If you missed last week, go back to last week and watch that. You can catch up. You'll hear all kinds of thoughts on that, right? But I'll just remind us real quick when we talk about giving generously, right? It's not about do I have enough to give? It's not about it's about where your heart is and going, hey, am I taking a step forward in the journey of generosity? So what I would ask you to do, quite honestly, if you were saying, hey, I want to fully engage in the life of this church, I want to fully engage in generosity, I would say this, hey, make a plan. Just make a plan. I have a plan for generosity. A lot of you have a plan for generosity. I just ask you to make a plan For generosity, a plan might look something like this, right? Like, hey, I'm going to dedicate 1% of my giving or a specific amount, right? Just to give every week or every month or every year, whatever rhythm makes most sense for you, right? And again, it's not about it's about where your heart is and taking another step in the journey of generosity, because Jesus continually calls us to be more generous. So we're going to ask you to fully engage by inviting boldly, by serving passionately, and by giving generously, right? And listen, some of us go like, hey, I don't really know if my engagement matters, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe I'm just like a kidney, like real tiny little thing. It's the smallest thing I could think of. I don't know. I've never actually seen a kidney, but I've seen a kidney bean. It wasn't very big. You know what I mean? Like, if I go like, hey, I'm just this little, I don't feel like I have much to give. And at the same time, I'm like, well, can you imagine if your kidneys just decided to not be kidneys? You know what I mean? Like, my point is, listen, it doesn't matter. Like I get it. Some of us feel like, I don't really know if my engagement makes a difference. And I'm telling you, you're already attached to the body. And the body isn't at its fullest. And the body isn't as healthy as the body can be. And the movement that we're a part of doesn't have the impact or the influence that it ought to have in our world. If you are already connected to the body, aren't fully engaged in the life of the body needs you. So in a minute, we're going to have a time of commitment for those of us who call this church our home, or for those of us who are ready to call this church our home. But before we do that, I just want to share this. There's a passage that I've kind of fallen in love with lately over the last couple of weeks. It's written by Peter, actually. Peter, one of the first disciples to actually make this bold statement of faith, this bold statement of who Jesus is. Right? And Peter then becomes one of the earliest leaders within the movement of Christianity. And as the church begins to spread throughout the world, right, throughout the ancient world, and churches begin to be established throughout the ancient world, Peter recognized the stress and the weight that churches were feeling in their respective communities. And so he wrote a letter that's actually called a circulation letter. It was a letter that was written to be passed around from one church to another, right? So they could all benefit from this. And he said some words in that letter, the churches then, that I think ring true to us as a church today. He wrote this. He wrote, so put away all malice and deceit, hypocrisy and envy, and all slander, things that hold the body back from being able to move forward. He says, like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. He says, as you come to him, a living stone rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious. He says, you yourselves are like living stones, being built up as a spiritual house, as a place for God's presence, for God's Spirit to dwell and reside. As if to say that in the same way God's presence once dwelt or lived within a tabernacle, and then that same presence moved into the temple, God's presence then moved to dwell within his church. But not a church that's a building built with brick and mortar. No. A church that's built of living stones. A church that's built of you. That in the same way that people once experienced God's presence, they might experience it again. But no longer would the world come to a place, to a structure, to experience God's presence. But that God's presence would actually be taken into the world by the people that he dwells within, by you. So as we have a time of commitment this morning, you're committing really to a couple of things. Committing first to this, you're committing to building the church. But you're committing to build the church by being the church. In every place that you walk into, in every space that you find yourself, in every relationship that you find yourself in every person that you find yourself in front of, in each and every moment, you are that church. So in just a minute, I'm going to pray. When I'm done praying, we'll give you the chance to commit. For those of us who call this church our home or are ready to call this church your home, you're going to have a chance to commit. And just come down. You can bring your card, right? It's very simple. There's nothing magic to this. It's just a piece of paper, but it's a symbol at the same time. There's boxes at the end of each aisle down front. You can just drop that card in, right? Just lay that there as a symbol of saying, hey, I'm in this. With the other people who call this place home, right? I'm in this. Right? Committing to partner with this space. And you'll find right next to that a basket that just has a pile of stones. Again, there's nothing magic to this. It's just a rock, right? But I'd love for you to take this. I'd love for you to put it somewhere where you'll see it each day in the weeks and the months to come. Put in your car, put it on your kitchen sink, put it on your dresser, put it on your desk at work, wherever you're going to see this. As just a reminder and a symbol that wherever you find yourself and wherever you are, you are this church. So let me pray for us. When I'm done, if you'd like to participate in Commitment Sunday, you can just come down, drop your card, grab a rock. God, I thank you for this space, these people, this group that I get to call friends, brothers, sisters, family. God, I thank you for the things that you're doing in our hearts. I thank you for the ways that you've created each of us and brought each of us to this space for a specific reason and a specific purpose. God, for the person in the room this morning who finds himself going, hey, I don't really know if I belong here. I don't really know if I have something to give here. God, would you help them to see how essential that they are to the body? Would you help them to see just how important, how valuable, and how needed they are, and how much this body needs them to be engaged, how you want to use them to make an impact. God, for those of us who are on the fence and find ourselves going, I don't know if I'm ready to step into this. God, if there's anything that's holding us back, if there's any fear or concern or hesitancy or anything going on that makes us go like, I don't know if this is for me yet, I don't know if I'm ready. God, if there's anything holding us back that you would have us to rid ourselves of, would you help us to let those things go? God, for the person in the room who has called this church their home for a while, God, the person who was ready to fill out a card on day one, God, would you continue to move us to an even deeper level of engagement? Would you continue to show us what it looks like to step even further into being your church in this season? God, would you break our hearts for the world around us? Help us to see the needs that are in front of us every day. God, help us to meet those needs in those moments as representatives, not just ambassadors, but parts of your body. Jesus, we thank you for giving us the opportunity and the privilege of being a part of your movement in our world. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. If you'd like to respond, if you'd like to commit, you can do that now.